door, now!
It all started within the woods. Not actually within the woods, but with a horror short film from 1978 titled Within the Woods. The $1,600 budget film was the product of a young director named Sam Raimi, who wanted to prove to investors that he could create a feature-length film with a decent-sized budget. Raimi developed the short with his friend Bruce Campbell, selecting a horror project out of a blooming interest through his other short films he was making, and the generally consistent audience response he'd received when directing scarier fare. Raimi was inspired by B-movies he watched in drive-ins and Lovecraftian literature he read while creating the film, which centered on 4 friends who are attacked by a demonic entity while staying in a cabin in the woods together. Starring Bruce Campbell, Ellen Sandweiss, Mary Valenti, and Scott Spiegel, and utilizing an extremely low budget, filming took only a few days to do, and the short film was subsequently screened on October 30th, 1978, right before a showing of the Rocky Horror Picture Show, costing only $1.50 per ticket. Little did anyone know that this short would become the proof of concept for a movie that created a franchise that spans over 50 years, 5 movies, 10 video games, decades of comics, a 3-season-long TV show, and even a musical. But it's those movies specifically that changed the landscape of horror cinema forever, containing some of the most creative, genre-bending stories, visuals, and ideas ever put into scary films. Welcome to ZCN Ticket, and this is Up to Screen. The release of Within the Woods, the now legendary director Sam Raimi would eventually write, direct, and release an expanded remake of the film. The film is notorious for having an extremely troubled production history that the star Bruce Campbell described as 12 weeks of mirthless exercise in agony. The filming conditions were honestly not that far off from the events in the actual movie. Since it was a very small production, the actors often chipped in with manual labor, which got much worse when winter came. The blood and guts everyone got spilled were hard to remove and would stick to the floor. Actors left without scenes being filmed, leading to scenes getting cut or finished with roles being subbed in. The remaining cast members at the end of the original shoot got evicted from their production house and had to live in the cabin they were filming in. Filming was 90% shot before they had to leave and come back at a later date to finish the movie. The budget was reportedly a low $375,000 and was entirely the work of young actors and a young director still finding his voice. This gives the movie a very specific vibe that the sequels do not contain, with the lo-fi production quality, ridiculous melodrama, and unintentional hilarity being a building ground for future entries to expand upon. This doesn't mean this movie is worthless through today's eyes. Far from it. It's still a Sam Raimi film, and it's still terrifying. The film follows 5 friends who find a cabin to hang out in for some time, but discover that this cabin hosts the Necronomicon, also known as the Book of the Dead. And when one of the friends plays a tape recording of some chants from the book, demon creatures known as Deadites possess the friends, one by one, and trap them in the cabin all night, forcing them to fend for survival. It takes possession and body horror to the next level, and isn't just violent for its time, but is still gruesome by today's standards. The film may start off slow, but once it gets to the Deadites, it shifts between successfully scary and straight up goofy in a way that many movies can't replicate in the modern film landscape. Raimi, despite being young, was already experimenting with different shooting styles and camera movements. The most famous example of this is how, at multiple points, the movie's demons are not shown on screen, but personified through the camera rushing and flying towards the victims through the desolate woods. It's a bold choice that shows, despite not having the most original plot, Raimi had the imagination to go places others wouldn't have. He created a movie that could be goofy and dumb and clearly a first project, but also genuinely frightening in an extreme way that many didn't see the real potential in. The movie premiered in 1981 at the Detroit Redford Theater, but wasn't distributed statewide due to a lack of major interest and monetary reasons. It would eventually be screened out of competition in 1982's Cannes Film Festival, leading to Stephen King watching and raving about the film. King's support is cited as a major factor in critical and eventually studio interest in the movie. Due to the positive critical reception and enthusiastic audiences at the few singular screenings it got, New Line Cinema released the film theatrically on April 15, 1983. The minuscule budget led to it being quite profitable financially, and the film's relentless scares gave it a dedicated cult following that only intensified with time. It was decently well received at the time, being a modest success critically and commercially. Today, the movie is regarded as a highly influential in its genre and film at large, and a horror classic. However, it would take another 6 years and some desperate circumstances for the sequel to be released.